When Charlie first received word from Raff inviting him to hunt dragons in the South, Charlie had a pretty good idea just what his parents would say about that. But it was just too good to pass up the opportunity of a lifetime. Raff had told Charlie that the Rangers avoided all technology, apparently for some religious reason, although Charlie couldn't understand why. His parents dragged him to temple services all the time, and he had never heard any cleric preach against knowledge. But when Charlie had met Raff, that's what Raff had said, and so even the invitation couldn't be sent by telecom or cool phone. And as Charlie figured, they probably couldn't get reception in the South anyway. Charlie had told Raff where he lived. "You really can't miss it, buddy," he'd say. "Just go north and look for the biggest estate in the city." Chill Court was located in the center of northern Nexus, the capital of all Frost. And while Charlie had exaggerated on it being the biggest, he had done so only slightly, for his parents owned a vast estate to rival that of most any other. Charlie's father was the chief counselor to the king himself, King Hailstorm, ruler of all planet Frost. Charlie's mother served as royal spokeswoman for the king. And these titles had afforded Charlie's parents a house which was nearly the size of the planet itself, though only Charlie and his parents lived in it. Well, they and all their robo-servants. Chill Court was near the Royal Ice Castle, but on its own private property and surrounded by a forest of ever-white trees. The estate itself was built in the style of the North, tall and grand with crystal white towers reaching to the frosty sky. The inside of the estate was decorated in shades of white frosting and had one grand staircase, which was seldom used. Charlie and his parents usually rode the electric elevate lifts, which not only went up and down, but could also slide on tracks to all sides of the house. Charlie had not only his own private room, but many private chambers, which took up the entire north wing of the house. His private swimming pool filled one room in itself. His bed was not only king-size, but monarch-size, and he had one whole room for his clothes and another room just for his electro-music screen, which could play any type of tunes he wanted at the switch of an ice knob. Yet another room held all his snowboards and skis, and a huge screen for virtual slopes much more complex than the real ones he had access to outside. This was his very favorite room of all, and one whole wall was covered with posters of Skyla Snowflake, the Silver Singer. Charlie had been in this room, hovering in air on his Electro Air Blaster snowboard before a virtual screen image of the Bitter Blaster ice slopes, when his robo-butler rolled in on its four wheels and announced, in its static electrical voice, that Charlie had received a delivery from a blizzard bird. The robot was light white and designed as all models were, small and square in shape and built to resemble a block of ice. The robots had no eyes or mouth, but both sensed and spoke from the console on their front, which lit up in electrical waves of blue whenever they spoke. The voice module of the robots could be adjusted for comfort, should a person feel the flat mechanical speech was too dull or disturbing. But after Charlie had once programmed the robot butler to speak with a high-pitched screech, he had been permanently forbidden to ever again mess with the robot controls. The robot was now on wheels, but that was only because it was indoors, as its feet were programmed to change as to what was needed, and while outside, the robots would be on snowboards. And outside is where the robo-butler must have encountered the blizzard bird. Blizzard birds were rare, especially in the north. Charlie had only seen two, and one had been on a visual screen. The birds had small gray bodies, but big beaks and even bigger wings, and were said to fly nearly as fast as Charlie's laser blast jet. Although he knew this could certainly never be true. But they were fast, that seemed a fact. And they could fly very far. Charlie ran up to his robo-butler and eagerly held out his hand. There could only be one person on the whole planet who would send him a message by Blizzard Bird. Everybody else just used the cold phone or the frost message center. But to get a message by Blizzard Bird was just a speck, not the most common occurrence in Charlie's life. "Well, give it to me, give it!" Charlie shouted, holding out and waving his open palm. Not that he'd ever speak to a person as such, but Charlie knew no robots had feelings. Although it suddenly dawned on him that his mother might have set the dials to record for later view, and he swallowed and smiled and said, please? The robo-butler complied, though most likely not because of that, and the slot below its face screen suddenly slid open and out shot a rolled scroll of what looked and smelled like brown hide. Dragon hide. Charlie let out a whoop as he grabbed hold of the scroll. It was tied with brown string, rough and wrapped in a strange series of knots, but Charlie wiggled his thin fingers through and knew he could unravel it in no time. He was not successful, and so he swiftly ran to his personal study room where sat on nice ice shelves all the electro books he was supposed to read. An ice desk sat there as well, sculpted and made of only the finest ice in the north. Charlie punched a small button on the desk with his finger, and a panel slid open at once. He reached in and yanked a pair of pliers from within. The pliers were sharp and pointed, and soon the knot was conquered and undone. Charlie frantically unrolled the hide. It felt thick and rough, and had some scales sprawled across it. Inside words were written in what looked like the style of old stone carvings he'd once seen on a historical visual screen story. Despite that, Charlie couldn't help but let out a sharp whistle, very impressed. Dude's penmanship puts mine to shame, he thought. And then he read. My friend, the scroll read, the sister moon has reached the second cycle in its rise on second solstice day. Charlie frowned, but the faithful robo-butler had rolled in right behind him as usual, and so he turned and snapped his fingers twice to the mechanical man. Second solstice, he asked. He could hear the gears whirling within the robot's head for a few moments. The wavy lines of blue splashed across its screen. Second solstice, it said, reporting as commanded. A centennial orbit of the second moon. Charlie blinked. Centennial means once a century, the robot said. I knew that, Charlie said, and he turned back to the scroll. This sacred event foretells the return of the blue ice lizard. Charlie let out a whoop bigger than ever before. The blue ice lizard, he cried out. A very rare breed of dragon, said the robot. But Charlie held out a hand. I do believe I'm aware of that, he said, apparently assuming his mother hadn't turned on the recording dial. And even if she had, that didn't so much matter. A blue ice dragon? That was a thing only seen in stories, like in his old children's book of lost and forgotten tales. A title which, come to think on it, he had never thought ever made much sense at all. But that didn't so much matter now either. He had a chance to see a real live blue ice lizard. The rest of Raff's notes said that Charlie was invited to stay in the ice caves with Raff, if he could arrive by the 44th day of that month of second fall. And together we shall hunt of the blue ice lizard, the scroll went on to say, and it ended with, my garraw. Charlie once more turned to the robot and snapped his fingers twice. Garraw, he asked. The robot took several moments to whirl this around in its head, but finally seemed to click. Garraw, it said, sounding it out. Ancient ranger term for very close friend. At that, Charlie blushed a bit, then puffed out his chest. The robot informed him that the blizzard bird was awaiting an answer outside. Charlie had wanted to keep the dragon hide, but his house didn't have any paper to write on as they only sent messages by electricity. And Charlie was certainly not going to write all over a picture of Skyla. Charlie could have recorded a short voice message on the snow comm. But even though it was so small the bird would carry it back, he guessed Raff wouldn't know how to turn it on. And if he did, he might freak out, thinking Charlie was somehow trapped there inside the thing. Charlie chuckled at an image of Raff growling and smashing the snow comm with his claws in order to free his best friend, his garraw. Charlie liked the sound of that. I'm a best garraw. But one garraw should never keep his other garraw waiting, and so Charlie ran to the room that was his own private kitchen. The robo-chef was there, as always, and it spun around on its wheels and at once asked Charlie if he'd like a malt frost mix. With plenty of sprinkles on top, Charlie ordered, but first, I do believe I require an ice pick. The robo-chef responded at once with opening its mouth slot and offering it to him. Charlie took the ice pick and slapped the hide scroll down on the kitchen counter, which was also carved from smooth ice. Charlie stuck his blue tongue into the side of his cheek, unaware he was doing so, as he tried very hard this time to write his letters so they were actually legible. "You can count on me, Raff," was what he wrote. And then he thought about it. There was no way he could tell his parents where he was really going. They would say it was way too dangerous. So he would just tell them that he was going on some ski trip for 3 days in the southeast Arctic air zone. Reception was really bad out there due to all the epic blasts of flurries, and he would only be away for 3 days at most, so they really shouldn't question anything. Charlie finished his note to Raff saying he'd stay for 3 days, and he signed it, "My Garraw." The faithful robo-butler was once again right behind him and stood waiting to take the response. But there was no way Charlie was passing on a chance to see a real live blizzard bird. Charlie could have taken the elevate lift. Charlie could have walked down the grand staircase. Charlie could have run down the grand staircase. But those options were much too easy, so instead Charlie grabbed his snowboard and hovered down and over the banister of the staircase. Neither his parents were home, of course. The blizzard bird was perched on the grand front ice steps, pecking away at the ground. Charlie held out the rolled scroll. He had tried to tie it the same way as before. He had not been successful, but the bird nodded its little head as it let out a caw which sounded like ice breaking. The blizzard bird stepped closer to Charlie and took the scroll in its little claws before launching into the moonlight sky of midday. Charlie waved as it flew. And 3 weeks later, he was soaking in an ice-cold pond and being offered raw fish for dinner. But he was also with his best friend, his Garraw, and about to hunt the famous blue ice dragon.